camel to c3, and then he might even, yeah, I'm not sure what I would do with my fourth step there. This is a tricky position. When there's action on diagonally opposite wings, it's always very tricky. You have to be very careful not to leave pieces exposed where you'll lose the initiative.
Yes, indeed. So gold's advantage is still rather small, but still silver has to do something, has to find something, because if silver cannot find some good initiative and some good plan, then gold has a very straightforward plan with this rabbit pool, and so silver might find himself behind if he doesn't find anything creative. So indeed, Fritzlein is thinking for quite some time on this move 12g, and that's an important move. He has to choose where to move his camel. I suppose he could also just not move the camel, and he could even maybe, use 2 steps to pull a rabbit and then move the elephants to e5, and indeed that's what he does. So silver could just push the camel into d2 to make gold's camel rather passive, and then try to pull the gold horse on b3 with his own camel. That would be an option. But still gold is really fine because silver doesn't have much attacking opportunities. Maybe on move 12s, pulling the horse directly is possible. Pulling the horse to b4 with the camel. In this case, gold could just move his own camel into b3, so no, that wouldn't work. So that's not easy for silver to find something very, very forceful to do. What do you think, Greg?
Yeah. Actually, I like 12g, and one thing I like about Fritzlein's move is that if he had used his own steps to move his camel, he would have used 1 step for the dog to unfreeze the camel, and then he used a few steps for the camel. But right now he's kind of he might be forcing Tuks to push the camel, in which case the camel kind of gets a free ride without using steps. So if the elephant pushes the camel onto f3, I think that would make it easy to just push the silver rabbit from h5 to h3 with no threat of a silver counterattack. And if the elephant pushes the camel west, then the camel is a threat. So I guess that's the other option, push it down. So, but I still think that Fritzlein has an advantage now. He can just flip the rabbit either to h3, get it to h3, or maybe keep the gold horse on g5 and flip the rabbit to g4. I like that idea, although one thing you'd have to be concerned with is that the gold camel is now on e2. So the other option is to try to get it over to c2 or something like that. If Fritzlein's concerned that silver's going to build a strong attack in the west, he might look at that. Yeah, I guess flipping a rabbit to g4 is slightly dangerous, because if he flips the rabbit to g4 and then the camel comes down to b3, that might be a little bit of a tricky situation for silver. I'd have to think about that one. What do you think?
Yeah, it's always a dilemma whether to move the camel on the wing where you are trying to get a rabbit hostage, so here around f3 in the east, or move the camel on the other wing to prevent any kind of counterattack from the opponent. It's much easier and much stronger to frame a rabbit with the camel, because the rabbit frame would hold basically unconditionally, even without the elephant, and even if silver charges ahead with several pieces. So that would be the stronger rabbit frame. But maybe relocating the camel towards f3 on move 13g lets silver attack along the b file, and so gold's rabbit frame plans might be a little bit slow, and maybe silver might get some kind of compensation in the west meanwhile. So instead, on move 13g, Fritzlein decides to relocate the camel towards c3 and prepares pulling the rabbit very slowly, but pulling it first to h4 and then to h3 with the cat, I suppose. So Fritzlein is going for the slightly slower plan in terms of how quick you could frame the rabbit, but it would strengthen his western wing, and now silver has to do something strong. I mean, his rabbit is going to get pulled in the end, no matter what he does. So he's got to find something very forceful in the west. And with Gold's camel being able to reach the b3 square very quickly, probably, it's not going to be that easy to design some kind of attack. So I suppose on 13s, pulling the horse to b4 is an option. Now it's still not an option because Gold's camel would reach b3. So maybe pushing into b3 with his own camel might be an option for Silver, trying to get some kind of space advantage in the west. The Silver camel would not be easy to hostage, and maybe even impossible to hostage, because there is this horse on a3, which could even go to a2, and then there would be no camel hostage. But it's not clear whether Silver can engineer anything before Gold frames the rabbit on f3. Yeah, so can you see something interesting for Silver besides charging into b3 here, Greg?
No, I think strategically, I think that Tuks, his best option might just be to give up that rabbit. I mean, it would take, I guess it would take about, 9 steps for Gold to capture that silver rabbit. And during those 9 steps, you can use 4 steps to get a camel into b3, about maybe several more steps to advance rabbits, or put a elephant on d3 and maybe get the get the silver horse to a2. One thing I like about the silver horse on a2, well, actually, I would prefer to get a rabbit onto a2, but yeah, if the horse is on a2, then the camel's impossible to hostage. So maybe the other idea would be to get, if he can ever maybe just put the camel on b4, try to get the horse on the, maybe camel on b4 and rabbit on a4, and then with the idea of using a few moves to try to get the horse on from a3 to b3, and then hopefully get a rabbit to a2. Now, what Fritzlein would probably do is put a rabbit on a2 himself to prevent the silver rabbit from reaching a2, but I find even a silver horse on b3 with a silver rabbit on a3 is a very strong attack as well. So I think that if the silver rabbit on h5 is lost, but the silver counterattack against c3 is very strong, we might still see a pretty balanced game. I think that a really strong attack against c3 would be offsetting the material disadvantage.
Well, yes, Silver is certainly looking at this kind of strategic bind or strategic space advantage in the west right now on move 13s. I used to like this kind of advantage, space advantage, and attack around b3, etc. But I really don't feel like it could be worth a rabbit. I'm really of the mind that this h5 rabbit pool is worth more than what Silver can engineer in the west, especially since Silver was a bit slow to get this western attack going. If the western attack had been quicker, then maybe Gold wouldn't have had time to pull and frame the rabbit or capture the rabbit. But here it feels like probably Gold is going to be able to capture the rabbit while defending rather simply c3. So Gold will suffer some kind of disadvantage in the west. I think that's unavoidable now because Silver is more advanced, has the a3 horse and the probably a b5 attack with the camel. But I'm really not too optimistic for Silver's chances, and I feel like the rabbit capture is probably worth more. Well, I suppose we are going to see. So on move 14g, probably using 3 steps to pull the rabbit into h4 and relocating the elephant closer to c3 is a very logical move. Do you see other good alternatives for? Well, he's doing something different.
Also, I guess he accomplished 2 things on 14g. He's blocking the silver horse from reaching a2, which we were discussing earlier, and he's creating a lane for his own camel to reach. So if Silver wants to delay things, he could flip the camel to e3, but I guess that doesn't save any time because then the camel could reach c2 on the next turn. So, or he could flip the camel to d4, but again, I don't know. Maybe flipping the camel to d4 is not bad. If that's Silver's biggest concern is that the camel's going to reach the b3 square on the next turn, he could flip it up to d4. Then the camel would run right around the north side. It would run back over to b4. So yes, I guess that's not too bad. So Silver could think of, I guess, he can get his camel out of his horse out of a bit of difficulty by pulling a rabbit from a2 to a3. If he's worried that the camel's going to take it hostage next turn. Or he could just put, if he puts his own camel on b4, maybe 2 steps to put a camel on b4, and then 2 steps to move a cat or a dog onto c5. No, sorry, I was thinking that to prevent a flip, but it wouldn't. So if the camel just goes to b4, it makes the hostage more difficult. Yeah, it would make it more difficult, but the camel would just get flipped over to d4. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess Silver's attack isn't going to be that good. So Fritzlein's defending pretty well here.
Yes, indeed. And so on move 14s, Tuks has to pull a rabbit into a3, and that's not very pleasant, because anyway Silver is way behind in the rabbit pulling race, and even if he considers his h5 rabbit as basically lost, still he's got this a5 rabbit, so he cannot achieve anything with a rabbit pulling in the west. So, well, I don't really see how Silver is going to proceed with the attack now in the west. Yes, that was a very nice 14G. Not trying to pull the rabbit yet, but slowing down Silver's attack by threatening to move the camel towards b3. Now the camel will reach b3. I think there is no way around it. And maybe Tuks is actually thinking of pushing the gold g4 horse into g5 and trying to mess with gold's attempts to frame this h5 rabbit. What do you think, Greg?
Yeah, I think if it was Silver's turn right now and he pushed the gold horse to g5 and then he followed that up by moving his camel to b3, maybe that would work. But I think if the gold camel gets to b3 right now, then I think the horse push to g5 is less effective, because the gold elephant would protect from the f5 square, and I can't see Silver doing much of a counterattack with a gold camel at b3. So I think, yeah, I like this idea of trying to get the camel over to b3. So see here on 15s, I think if Tuks just wants to get his horse out of there, he can move his rabbit out of the way. No, see, actually this is good, because the camel didn't quite reach b3, so the Silver camel can still reach b3 if that was his intention.
Yes, indeed. Also, if you had moved the camel to b3, then the gold horse would have had to advance to b4, I think, and then Silver's camel could have pulled it to b5, but maybe that wasn't bad at all. So now on move 16g, gold has to relocate his elephant towards f5. He could also threaten the a4 horse with his elephants, threaten to capture on c3. I don't think trading the horse would be good though, because gold would find himself with a very weak eastern wing with just a cat and a dog around f3, and so suddenly Silver would have an attack, an elephant plus horse attack around f3, and so the advanced rabbit on h5 would not be a problem at all. It would be a strength. So I don't think gold can trade horses on move 16g, and so he has to move his elephant to f5 as he does. And now indeed Silver can push into b3 with his own camel if he wants to do so, and that's indeed a very interesting square for the Silver camel, especially if gold cannot threaten the camel with his own elephant. That's not too clear. The elephant might go to b5. So if on move 16s, Silver pushes into b3 with his camels, and gold can move his elephant to b5, threatening a camel capture, and maybe that would work well for gold. Do you think this camel to b3 move is possible, Greg?
Yeah, I was looking at that, yeah. I mean, Silver would love to pull the horse up to b4 with his own camel on c4, but there's an obvious problem there that the camel's just hanging on c4. So that's not going to work. I don't think so anyways. Well, maybe that works, because the camel couldn't be captured right away. So if the camel moves down to c4, pulling the gold horse up to b4,